Hi quilters, I'm Janet from Bloc Loc, and have I got something fantastic to show you. Stick around. Before you start making pineapple blocks, it's extremely important to stabilize the bias. So please use a true starch product on your yardage before cutting strips. And if there was anything that I could show you that would make my point, it's this block, because there's a lot of bias on this block. And if you look at how mechanically awesome this is, even out to all these four corners, they came out perfect. That's why you want to stabilize your bias ahead of time. Also, you want to make sure that you print up the PDF file. In it, you will have your strip width cutting measurements, 2 ways to start with your beginning square in a square, and the formula for cutting your outside triangles. Round 1 is your square in a square. And this is what they look like when you've got your strips added to your center square. The seams are pressed to the outside from the center, so you're always pressing to the outside. In order to trim this, what we want to do is take one of the right angles on the ruler, and I'll just motion with this one right here. Take that right angle and put it right smack into the corner. And here is why that seam allowance is important, because this is letting you know that when you're going to trim this, it will end up with a square in a square with a sharp point, and you'll trim that off. If you happen to have a flying geese ruler, this makes the job really, really fast, because the flying geese ruler has a right angle groove. So I can just lock on and quickly trim and trim and trim. Okay. Once I've done that, now it's really important to remember to trim the width of the strip, because when you're adding your strips, they are always oversized. And so what I want you to pay attention to is this. You see the right angles that I've been talking about, and also this dashed line. This is really important to pay attention to and use when you're trimming your rounds. So once you're locked on, like I've done here, I'm going to slide this ruler up until one of those right angles is on the cut edge of this square in a square. That's going to keep the angle true at every round. And so I'll do that. And I'll slide it again. If it turns out that my unit is a little bit distorted, you can finesse the ruler to make sure that that angle is straight. But you just work your way around and trim all the widths. And that is what round 1 looks like when it's been trimmed. So let me set up for round 2. Okay, for round 2 and beyond, you need to know what length to cut your strips to add to each side. So what you want to do is take a ruler with a good grid system and put it on your unit about 1/4 of an inch in. You don't have to be exact on that, but what you need to pay attention to is that there's 1/4 of an inch off of the cut edge of this angle right here. So there's an extra 1/4 of an inch here. And then look over here, and by adding an extra 1/4 of an inch, that means that the strips that you're going to cut to add to all 4 sides would be 4 inches. And so that's what I've done there. So let me get the sewing machine set up, and I'll show you how to sew the strips on. So you need to know how to stitch the strips to your block. So one thing you need to do is turn your block upside down, and you're going to visually center your block onto the strip. And so what you want to do is make sure that you have approximately 1/4 of an inch hanging off on each end, like that, just like that. That's what you need to see. And then as you are stitching, remember that if your strips separate from each other, you need to follow your trimmed strips and not the oversized strips from underneath. And so you'll just add your strips on all 4 rounds And then the next thing I need to do is get set up and show you how to actually trim them. At every round, it's really important to know how to press the strips. This is a really important subject because it's important not to distort anything. So the way that I do it is I'm going to finger press the seams to the outside. The reason for that, you're going to do a lot less damage with your fingers, and if you need to change your mind, particularly, let me show you this, particularly if you are adding strips all the way out to the corner, there are certain blocks that you'll have to repress to the inside. So finger pressing is not permanent and you can change your mind later. The one thing that you really don't want to do is to take your iron and go like that to get the seams coked in the outside direction, because that's going to cause distortion and stretching every single time. So just lightly finger press, and then you can kind of hold it back a little bit, and then you press up and down with the iron. You want to be very, very gentle, and if you want to use steam, that's okay, but treat it with the utmost respect because it'll stretch if you let it. Okay, now that our block has gotten bigger, you need to learn how to trim the strips. And so if you notice, it looks like it's kind of squarish, and so we're going to trim the sides first. So take the ruler and you're going to actually lock onto the previous round. Then you're going to slide the ruler until that right angle is on the seam line and cut. I'm going to rock back a little bit. Then slide the ruler forward until the dashed line is on the seam, right here, the one above it, and trim that. And so you will trim all four sides first. I always do it this way. I'm one of those creatures of habit. And if you always do it the same way, there will be far less mistakes later. So you'll trim all four sides. And then we'll remember to trim the width of the strip too. Okay, so I've got my sides trimmed, and then to trim the width of the strip, slide it until the right angle is on the cut edge, making sure that it's even. And then by looking at this, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but I'm going to run out of room because this block has gotten so big. So in order to accommodate that, you're going to start trimming until you get about halfway up, and then slide the ruler forward until you've got this angle up here on the cut edge up at the top, and then continue cutting. So this is how you can trim virtually any size pineapple block with this little ruler. Very nifty. So you just work your way around, and then if I were to keep adding strips, my next round would be blue. Okay, so that's how you trim the strips. So the next step is figuring out what size triangle to measure for the corners. And before I do that though, I want to show you something. Because I had cut out of this toile fabric and it is directional, I want the white or the cream to be into the corners, and so that's what I would measure. So from the previous round that I added, I since have added a strip of blue, and now we need to measure this to determine what size to cut our triangles. So I'm going to turn the block like this, put on my nifty glasses here because I can't see otherwise. This is an odd way of measuring, I understand, but it is quite simple. You're going to take a ruler and you put it exactly the corner of the ruler right there on that corner of the pineapple block, and then look over here and it's approximately 7 inches. And so the formula is just from corner to corner of the cut edge and then subtract 1/4 of an inch. You'll notice here in a little bit, as soon as I bring this over, you'll see I've already sewn these. If that is too much fudge factor for you, you can subtract 1/2 inch, but I like that fudge factor. So I've got my square cut, and this is 6 3/4, and then you just cut it in half. Just like that. Then you're going to take each one and fold it in half. Scratch a little line in there. And then to add it to the side, you're going to fold this in half. And then just like when you're adding the strips, this is upside down and your triangle is underneath, and you're going to match up those halfway marks, and then you'll stitch. Okay, the last thing you need to know is how to square off your corners. Because you can make your pineapple blocks quite large, here's how I recommend squaring the corners. You want to use a ruler with a clear grid system and place it on the last strip. These strips are 1 1/4 from the seam line to the cut edge. So, or the other way you could look at it is the finished size of the strip and add 1/4 inch. But you want to put your ruler so that you have 1 1/4 on the ruler up here and 1 1/4, which it is not, there it is, and make sure it's on there nice and straight, and then you'll just trim that off and trim that off, and you'll work your way around. And I'll just do one more side. Oops, I just dropped my rotary cutter. And do this again. Thanks. And then the last thing you would want to do is get a smaller square and put it right there in the corner, just to double check that you've got it good and square. And there's a little bit that I need to trim off right there. And that, my friends, is how you square off your pineapple block. Okay, so in looking back over these glorious pineapple blocks that you can just go wild and unleash your imagination on, this blue one was made with the smallest ruler. These are a combination of 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch strips. This one is also made with the smallest ruler. This one and this one was made with the medium-sized ruler with your 1/2 inch and your 1 inch finished strips. And then the largest ruler are these two samples, and we have 3/4 and 1 1/2. So you're going to love these rulers. I know you will. Thanks for joining us today. Please visit our website for more information, and happy quilting.